Imagine if all the baddies in the world could read your mind. I'm talking about the unfiltered thoughts. You might be thinking you're cooked. But hey, women are naturally competitive, so when a guy thinks that babe is hot, I want to smash her, another one hears it and beats her to the punch. And just like that, our protagonist ends up being both the lucky and the unlucky bastard, because he's supposed to be the villain, but all the heroines are coming after him. The story begins with someone suddenly shouting at our protagonist, asking why he is just sitting there and telling him to go greet the daughter of the Zhao family, who is waiting at the door. Our protagonist blinks in confusion, but the man shouts again, asking if he is deaf. Before anything else, a smack lands on his head. The old man angrily orders him to get up and greet her properly. Our protagonist is Linghu Qiang, the CEO of the Linghu Corporation. At that moment, the system pops up and explains that the old man who hit him is his grandfather. Our protagonist is inside a novel called The Mad Consort of the Four Seas Dragon King. In addition, his identity here is the villain Linghu, and there are only 5 chapters left before his death. Linghu turns pale, shocked that there are only 5 chapters left this time. Before he can process it, another smack lands on his head. His grandfather tells him to stop mumbling and hurry up to greet the girl. Left with no choice, he stands up and reluctantly agrees to go. As he walks through the hallway, everyone greets him respectfully. At the same time, thoughts run through his mind about how long he has been trapped inside these stories, unable to even remember when it all started. Everything began with a disaster. A billboard once collapsed on him and crushed his body completely. At that moment, a strange voice announced the activation of the counterattack villain system. Since then, he has been jumping from one story to another, always taking the role of a villain who is destined to die. Each time, survival depends on going against the protagonist. The problem is that every protagonist is broken and OP. Even missiles are useless against them, as they casually deflect attacks like they are nothing. Explosions end up backfiring and harming him instead. Once, he tried to face a sword immortal, only to be killed with a single strike. Now the same situation repeats again, with the system telling him to do his best. A car soon arrives outside, making it clear that this is one of those stories where the protagonist steals the villain's fiancée. The car door opens and a girl steps out, dressed neatly and surrounded by a strong aura. She is obviously healthy and the main target. Standing nearby is Zhang Beishuan, and beside him is Churan, the eldest daughter of the Xiao family. Beishuan gives off an overwhelming heroic presence, almost glowing like a main character with plot armor. Our protagonist cannot help but feel annoyed at how obvious it is. Approaching the young miss, he politely offers to carry her bags, but she coldly refuses and tells him not to touch her. Because of this, our protagonist recalls his identity in this world as the eldest son of the Linghu family, who has always acted like her loyal follower. However, after years of devotion with nothing in return, he now has to compete with Beishuan, who has the advantage of being her bodyguard and staying by her side at all times. In this story, Beishuan is extremely powerful and impossible to defeat, and on top of that, he clearly dislikes our protagonist. Churan then warmly asks Beishuan to carry her purse, treating him far better. Seeing this, our protagonist thinks the original version of himself was foolish for wasting so much effort and family resources on someone like her. None of it makes sense, and with only 5 chapters left separating the main protagonist from the female lead, the situation feels hopeless. Our protagonist notes that this is a harem-type novel, so naturally the main protagonist will get all the girls, but for him, as the villain, it is meant to screw him over. Instead of struggling, our protagonist decides it is better to just endure everything until it ends. Because of this, he calls out to Churan, adding that he has something important to tell her. However, she immediately responds coldly, saying she does not care about what he wants to say, but has something to say instead. He calmly lets her continue since the outcome is already obvious. She declares that he should give up on any hope because she will never marry him, no matter how much his family helps hers financially. Before she can continue further, our protagonist interrupts and agrees, saying that he also wants to cancel the engagement. What our protagonist says doesn't register at first, but when it does, she is left in utter shock. Churan is still reeling from the shock, and Beishuan becomes suspicious, thinking our protagonist must be plotting something. Churan assumes the same and tells him to stop pretending and reveal whatever scheme he is planning. She insists that no matter what he says, she will not believe him. Our protagonist insists on a timeout, adding that there is no plan at all. Just a simple decision. However, she refuses to believe it and claims she has already seen through this kind of trick before. As she approaches, our protagonist wonders if she still believes he is the same fool. He thinks that if she wants to be part of the main protagonist's harem, she shouldn't bother him, because he has reached enlightenment. He ends by calling her a stupid girl. Churin suddenly freezes. She looks around in confusion, wondering who just called her stupid. At that moment, our protagonist insists she is overthinking and assures her that he will take responsibility for explaining to the elders that the engagement cannot proceed. Once that is done, everything will be settled. Meanwhile, Baekchuan sighs in frustration. Apparently, something is wrong. The system suddenly appears in a panic, realizing that our protagonist's thoughts are leaking out loud for everyone in the story to hear. If this bug gets reported, the system itself could be deleted. To prevent that, it quickly makes an adjustment so that only certain thoughts and insults slip out, leaving the rest under our protagonist's control. As our protagonist continues walking, he thinks about the storyline. Originally, Baekchuan would get angry because he tries to take Churan, leading to him getting beaten up. That actually works in his favor. If he does not pursue Churan at all, then the main protagonist will have no reason to attack him. When they arrive at the door, the atmosphere becomes quiet. Churan is still unsettled, thinking about the strange voice she heard earlier. Our protagonist notices something unusual. For the first time, she tells Baekchuan to stay outside before entering a room, and surprisingly, the guy does not seem as angry as expected. Inside, our protagonist greets the patriarch and announces that he has brought Churan. His granddad corrects him, saying her name is just Churan and that he should know that well since he is supposed to be close to her. Then, he orders him to be more proactive. On the surface, our protagonist agrees, but in his mind, he has already given up. There's no way someone like him could end up with the city's #1 beauty. It's better to let her be with Baekchuan and simply focus on canceling the engagement, getting it over with, and moving on from the novel. Once again, Churan hears everything in his thoughts. She becomes even more confused, realizing the voice seems to be coming from our protagonist. She can tolerate him insulting her, but she doesn't understand why he is speaking badly about Baekchuan, or what Baekchuan has to do with creating a harem. She starts recalling how Baekchuan always protected her and reassured her in the past. That has nothing to do with what she is hearing now, making her question if this is some kind of rumor or misunderstanding. Meanwhile, our protagonist is completely unaware of what is happening and simply serves tea. His grandfather laughs, thinking the two are just being shy. He then suggests that it might be time for them to get married. Churan immediately stands up and refuses. She apologizes respectfully but makes it clear that there is no relationship between her and Lingwang, and she does not love him. Our protagonist agrees with her right away, saying she is right, and that forcing the marriage would be wrong. It is better for both sides to go their separate ways. This confuses her even more. His behavior is completely different from before. A man, presumably Churan's father, tries to smooth things over, saying she is just being immature and that our protagonist shouldn't take her words seriously. However, our protagonist firmly disagrees and insists that she is actually very mature for making her decision clear. Panicking, our protagonist insists repeatedly that the marriage must not happen. Churan, however, is left completely confused. Just the day before, he had sent her a very long letter expressing his feelings, and now he is acting like a completely different person. Her dad becomes emotional, thinking our protagonist is willing to stay by her side even without the engagement, which makes him seem admirable. Our protagonist realizes that the man is great in business but a complete blockhead when it comes to relationships. Turning to Churan, he tells her to recognize how much effort he is putting in for her and insists that the marriage will go on. Hearing this, our protagonist suddenly drops to his knees and begs, saying he does not want to marry her and asks for understanding. Churan hears his thoughts again, where he complains about her always being the one to reject him before. Yet now, she is strangely quiet. He insists that she throw a tantrum, calling her a big idiot. Churan, on the other hand, seems to have made up her mind and shows a smile. Her attitude completely changes. She says she finally understands him, thinking that all his talk about not wanting to marry her was actually his way of protecting her. She then declares that even if they do not have feelings now, they can develop them later, and she agrees to the marriage. Our protagonist is completely stunned. He cannot understand what is happening and starts thinking that something must be wrong with her. She then teases him, asking if he no longer likes her. Without thinking, he blurts out that he does, but in his mind, he is extremely frustrated, swearing and cursing with every word that comes to mind. Churan, however, finds everything amusing. She never realized he had so many thoughts hidden inside. Watching him struggle like this actually feels entertaining to her. Seeing her reaction, our protagonist gets annoyed and grabs her arm, saying they need to talk outside. While leaving, he asks permission from his granddad. Both men simply laugh, thinking this is just young love. Once outside, he tells her directly that this relationship will not work and that she can still refuse the marriage. Churan simply rejects the idea. Now that she knows he does not want it, she suddenly wants it even more. Since the marriage was arranged by their families, she sees no reason to refuse. Our protagonist tries to reason with her, saying she should marry someone she truly loves. He reminds her that she has always treated him badly and only asks her to show a little mercy by canceling the engagement. She responds playfully, saying that even if she does not like him now, she might start liking him later. Our protagonist panics internally, thinking that the main protagonist will definitely come after him if this continues. Churan hears this again and becomes confused. She cannot understand why our protagonist keeps mentioning Baekchuan or why he would be afraid of him. After all, our protagonist is one of the top young masters in the city, while Baekchuan is just a bodyguard. At that moment, our protagonist pauses and starts thinking deeply. He realizes there is no way out anymore. It is already too late. He slams his hand against the wall and asks one final time if she will accept or reject the marriage. Churan smiles calmly and says she accepts. She even asks what he plans to do about it. Our protagonist freezes on the spot because there is nothing left he can do. Soon after, the celebration begins. Glasses of wine are raised as everyone congratulates the couple. The entire hall buzzes with excitement. An alliance between the Lingu family and the Zhao family is seen as something powerful. Many people are surprised because they always believed Churan had no interest in our protagonist. So all those rumors now seem false. Baekchuan stands there in shock, unable to understand what just happened. His anger quickly explodes and he crushes the glass in his hand before declaring that he opposes the marriage. Our protagonist immediately panics inside. The moment he feared has finally arrived. Churan's father looks at Baekchuan and asks who he is. Baekchuan confidently tells him to look carefully. While Churan's dad squints, the crowd begins buzzing, thinking Baekchuan must be some hidden rich tycoon. However, Churan's dad finally remembers that he is just his daughter's bodyguard. This makes the situation even more ridiculous, as a mere bodyguard is now trying to interfere in a marriage. The entire hall becomes noisy as people start mocking him. Our protagonist could only curse at this damn background character for trying to upset the main protagonist. Churan's father quickly loses patience and orders Baekchuan to leave, adding that he was fired. However, Baekchuan refuses to back down. He declares that he will not allow Churan to be forced into something she does not want and insists that her marriage should not be decided like this. Churan is obviously speechless at his words. If her father's words don't matter in her marriage, what gives a mere bodyguard the right? Her father also gets angry and orders the guards to throw Baekchuan out. Instead of leaving, Baekchuan challenges them, saying it will take more than a few people to stop him. The guards move in and a fight breaks out instantly. Baekchuan attacks first, landing a powerful punch that sends one guard flying. The rest hesitate for a moment but then rush him together. He moves quickly, striking one after another, and then releases a burst of energy that sends everyone crashing across the room. He stands there confidently and challenges anyone else to step forward. Our protagonist watches everything in shock, realizing just how strong the main protagonist really is. He immediately thinks it would be safer to stay out of the situation. Instead of panicking outwardly, he suddenly claps and praises Baekchuan, acting calm and composed. He tells him there is no need to be so angry and reassures him that Churan wouldn't marry him, as if that should make things easier. The people around them begin whispering again. Even though the wedding was disrupted, they are impressed by how calm our protagonist remains. He carries himself like a true noble young master. Now, Baekchuan suspects that this was all part of our protagonist's plan to make him look foolish. Meanwhile, our protagonist is completely confused inside. Normally, the crowd would support the main protagonist, but this time they seem to be on his side instead. The situation feels completely wrong, and he starts imagining the worst possible outcome. In his mind, he even urges Baekchuan to just take Churan and leave already, since that would solve everything. He looks at him, wondering why he is not acting. Churan, on the other hand, finds everything amusing. On the outside, our protagonist looks calm on the surface, but inside he is completely panicking. Watching him struggle like this feels entertaining to her. Baishuan then declares that he does not care about anything else as long as Churan is safe. Walking up to Churan, he delivers his usual lines, "As long as he is present, no one will force her into anything." No matter how many people stand in his way, he is not afraid. Churan looks at him, and for a moment, it feels like things are going the usual way. Our protagonist even thinks this is the perfect moment for Baishuan to take her away. But everything takes a strange turn. Instead of reacting emotionally, Churan suddenly shows irritation, saying the guy is really getting on her nerves. What? Our protagonist is completely confused. This isn't part of the script. She should be emotional and allow herself to be taken away. Perhaps she didn't read the lines properly. Baishuan steps forward and grabs her arm, offering to help her escape safely. She immediately slaps his hand away and calls him out for being overly dramatic. She then turns toward our protagonist as if she wants to say something, but pauses. Baishuan becomes tense, unable to understand her reaction. Then Churan suddenly says she has figured everything out. She realizes that this world feels like a story designed for men, where she is meant to end up with Baishuan as one of the heroines. Damn, she just broke the fourth wall. She's aware of her own existence. This is the first time we've seen a female lead understand the Matrix. Churan stands there confidently, staring directly at him with her entire bakery, as if waiting him to say something. Fed up, Baishuan calls out to her, asking if this means she's afraid our protagonist might bother her in the future. Hearing this, our protagonist becomes nervous, wondering why they are standing so close. Baishuan steps closer and warns our protagonist not to even think about touching her, but he insists that Baishuan is misunderstanding the situation. Churan, however, tells him to step aside because she wants to speak to our protagonist. He ignores her and continues to block her, acting as if he is the one in control. At that point, Churan loses her patience and firmly tells him to stop making decisions for her. She clearly states that she is not going with him. However, Baishuan turns to her. He is convinced that she does not truly mean what she is saying and that she is just confused. Poor Churan is speechless at this point. He continues, saying her silence proves everything, but she does not need to worry because he fears no retaliation. He swears he will not let someone as gentle as her fall into the Lingu family's trap. Then he suddenly turns toward our protagonist with anger in his eyes. At the same time, he immediately remembers this exact moment from the story. This is the point where Baishuan looks at him with killing intent, and that is usually how he dies. In his mind, he starts blaming Churan, thinking she is putting on an act just to get him killed. Meanwhile, Churan stands there confused, wondering what she even did wrong. She questions whether she really looks like she is acting. At that moment, her father steps in and tells Baishuan that enough is enough. He insults him, saying he is like someone reaching far above his status. He also makes it clear that our protagonist is already part of the family. Our protagonist, however, is thinking the opposite. To him, both father and daughter feel like they are setting him up, pushing him toward danger. Baishuan refuses to accept it and insists that Churan should not be forced to marry someone like our protagonist, because he says that in this life only he will marry her. Churan is momentarily stunned, insisting that he shouldn't go that far. Inwardly, Churan is completely frustrated. No matter what she says, Baishuan twists her words into something else. The situation becomes exhausting. Baishuan smiles confidently and says she is just being shy, promising that he will come back for her. Our protagonist watches him, hoping he would just take her away so there would be no reason for him to return later and cause trouble. Baishuan then turns back and warns our protagonist that his attitude will not last long. Next time they meet, he will expose him and humiliate him in front of everyone. Our protagonist does not care about any of that. He calls out to him, indirectly suggesting that he should just take Churan and go. Baishuan finds his behavior strange, but still says he will return. Our protagonist doesn't like this. He wishes Baishuan would just take the foolish girl and leave, never to return. Of course, Churan hears his thoughts whenever she's being roasted. Fed up, she eventually snaps, shouting that they are both adults and demanding when this nonsense will end. Then, without warning, she grabs our protagonist and kisses him. Everyone is shocked, especially the main protagonist. She declares that this is proof of her decision. She says she will marry our protagonist and that she likes him, telling Baishuan to leave. Even after this, Baiwen still believes she is being forced and starts thinking about how to save her, even considering destroying the Linghu family if necessary. Our protagonist, on the other hand, is completely lost and cannot understand anything that just happened. At that moment, the system appears and congratulates him. He has completed the first mission by changing Churan's mindset. Because of that, she will now help him survive for the next 5 chapters. As a reward, he receives a 600 square meter villa. Surprisingly, our protagonist is not impressed at all. With his current wealth, a villa means nothing to him. In the next scene, our protagonist finally gets to relax after the chaotic banquet, lying down with a glass of wine. He calls out to the system, asking if it has something to tell him. The system happily responds that the second stage of the story has begun, and at that moment, our protagonist immediately regrets asking in the first place. Anyways, in this part, Shuran and Lingguang are forced into their alliance marriage. Her father will take them to meet an important elder named Tanzu. Tanzu is an old man who once raised and trained Churan's father. Now at the age of 70, he is seriously ill, and many people are trying to treat him, but none have succeeded. In the original story, Ling Hu introduces a so-called miracle doctor, but it ends in failure and embarrassment. After that, Beixuan appears and saves the day using a powerful medical technique, earning Tanju's favor. Because of that, Tanju later supports Beixuan's side, which leads to the decline of the Ling Hu family. Thinking about this, Ling Wuqiang realizes how bad the situation is. According to the plot, the main protagonist already has that powerful technique, while he has nothing to compete with. Going there would only lead to humiliation. The system encourages him not to give up, reminding him that as the villain, he must fight to survive. Just then, the door opens, and someone informs him that it is time to prepare for the banquet. The person is Huo Qiang. The system immediately warns that this man is known as the king of provocation, and that simply being around him increases the chance of dying by 50%. Ling Wuqiang quickly decides to remove him from the situation. He praises Huo Qiang and suddenly offers to send him abroad to become a shareholder, promising wealth and success. Huo Qiang is completely confused, not understanding anything about business or stocks. Our protagonist follows him to the airport and pushes him to believe in himself, adding that the guy is the best. Feeling relieved, our protagonist thinks he has finally gotten rid of a major problem. Checking his watch, he realizes it is time for the banquet. The next scene takes us to the Tan family hotel. Our protagonist steps out of the car, adjusts his tie, and informs Churan that he has arrived, asking for her location. While he is busy with his little plan, a baddie with the inflated twin peaks appears and asks why he looks so familiar. The author made sure all the important characters are stacked. She steps out of the car and suddenly remembers. Our protagonist gets hit straight on by her assets. She looks at him closely and asks if he isn't the ex-boyfriend she hated the most. The moment the protagonist recognizes the red-haired beauty, the system immediately triggers the host's memories of Mao Qiyue, the daughter of the prestigious Mao family. She and the protagonist were classmates and college sweethearts, but they broke up because of a ridiculous misunderstanding. Not long after, the original Ling Hu became Churan's follower, and as a result, Mao Qiyue gradually distanced herself from him. She smiles and says it hasn't been a long time since they last spoke, so there's no way he could have forgotten her. At the same time, the protagonist observes her figure and admits she is stunning. It is hard not to appreciate that she used to be his girlfriend. On top of that, he thinks the original Ling Hu is a complete idiot. Unfortunately, she hears that thought and looks around in shock, trying to find the source. By the time she looks forward again, our protagonist has vanished, which irritates her a bit since they were not done talking. However, our protagonist is busy talking to a blonde guy, thinking he needs to avoid another red flag. As he moves farther away, she notices the voice in his head becomes quieter. Our protagonist casually tries to make small talk, but his thoughts reveal his frustration. He complains, noting that beauty doesn't matter if she will end up in someone else's harem. He even calls himself the biggest fool in the novel. He is already unlucky as the villain and might now lose his ex-girlfriend too. Mao Qiyue hears everything, becomes furious, and steps closer. She asks what nonsense he is talking about. Confused, our protagonist denies saying anything, but she points out that he is clearly making a mess of things. After finally winning Churan over, he is now trying to make her angry. The protagonist is completely lost, thinking he has been trying to get a divorce this whole time and does not even like Churan. In his mind, someone like his Kiyui would be a better match. Of course, she hears that too and quickly realizes he has no idea she can hear all his thoughts. But what matters more is what he meant by saying she is better than Churan. Because of this, she asks why he suddenly changed his expression the moment she mentioned Churan, wondering if he doesn't want to marry her. In response, Ling Hu sighs, thinking this marriage is nothing but trouble. She presses further, asking why he acts like her lackey. He goes on another rant, explaining he never wanted that role and was forced into it. According to him, Churon manipulated everything and turned others against him, making his life miserable. She listens while quietly laughing at his complaints. Our protagonist doesn't understand why she started laughing, especially since he hasn't said anything. As a result, she steps closer and concludes that the misunderstanding from years ago was not his fault after all. Even so, she sighs, saying it is a pity he still has to get married. Our protagonist responds with a strange saying about preferring familiar things, then gently pushes her away, saying life would be easier with someone like her. But now he has no choice. At that moment, Churon steps out of the car. She has already heard his thoughts about preferring someone else. Seeing them standing close together, she shouts his name. Our protagonist is completely cooked. Anger flashes across her face, but she quickly calms down and decides to act differently. With a bright smile, she walks over and greets him warmly, pretending she has been looking for him. He is completely confused by her sudden change in behavior. Declaring her sovereignty, she hugs our protagonist tightly, calling him her husband. Before he can react, she grabs his face and goes in for a kiss. He is stunned, not understanding why her personality suddenly changed. Kiyo immediately realizes it is just an act and tells him they will talk after the banquet, reminding him her number has not changed. The girl is openly flirting with our protagonist in front of his fiancée. Churon, now clearly angry, pinches him hard and accuses him of flirting with other women even though he is about to marry her. He fires back, telling her to stop pretending since no one else is around and pointing out that she does not even want this marriage. She refuses to back down, saying the announcement has already been made and half the city knows about it. There is no way to escape now. Our protagonist argues that it would be better for her to be with someone she truly loves, but she snaps that her feelings are none of his concern. As they continue arguing, Baekchuan watches from a distance, convinced that Churon is suffering, even though her expression clearly shows the opposite. He blames Linghu for being too smooth with women and decides he must save her. He stands and receives buffs from the author. Meanwhile, inside the hall, Churon continues dragging Linghu along. He keeps asking her to stop acting, but she insists there is no need since they are getting married anyway. He still tries to bring up ending the engagement as they walk, lowering his head and muttering to himself. At any moment, Baekchuan is expected to appear and ruin everything. Staying away from Churon feels like the safest choice since he will definitely come to talk to her. Because of this, our protagonist pretends to have heard something. He quickly makes an excuse, saying he heard someone calling his name. Unfortunately, poor Churon does not hear that thought, and is left wondering if he truly hates her that much. As he walks past, Churon's dad notices him and calls him over, saying a special gift has been prepared. The gift turns out to be Dr. Shang Guan, who steps forward confidently and introduces himself as a top-class physician. Seeing his son-in-law's reaction, Churon's dad explains his plan. He notes that bringing such a doctor is a smart move. Even if the treatment fails, it will still look like a kind gesture. If it succeeds, it will strengthen the relationship between the Zhao, Linghu, and Tan families. Our protagonist simply asks for the doctor's name again. A memory surfaces from the original story where this so-called divine doctor with the surname Shang Guan was later exposed as a fraud by the main protagonist. Avoiding this situation had been the goal from the start. If that man gets exposed again, anyone connected to him will suffer, possibly even getting beaten for it. Our protagonist specifically sent Huo Qiang away, thinking it might solve his problem. However, it seems some parts of the story cannot be changed, especially those closely tied to the main plot. Churon's dad interrupts, asking why he is just standing there and telling him to escort the doctor inside. Suddenly, our protagonist clutches his stomach and pretends to be in pain, using it as an excuse to escape to the bathroom. Outside, holding a glass of wine, our protagonist reflects, thinking the whole situation feels ridiculous. Mao Kiyue appears again, staying close and asking if something is wrong. She notices that his interaction with Churon seemed unnatural. Our protagonist doesn't respond, so she grabs his jacket. Seeing this, he immediately tells her to let go, reminding her that he is already engaged. However, his thoughts reveal something else, warning himself not to get involved with beautiful women since they usually end up with the protagonist anyway. She dismisses that idea, saying engagements can be broken. Our protagonist really looks at her, struggling internally as another thought slips out, revealing how hard it is to resist her charm and wondering if he has a thing for slender waists. She blushes after hearing that and decides to push further, asking honestly who he prefers between her and Churon. He turns away and says Churon is his fiancée, while she is just a stranger. But his thoughts betray him again, showing that his resistance to her charm is weakening. She continues pressing, even lightly biting him, insisting he be honest, because even strangers can become friends. The girl is truly dangerous. Regardless, our protagonist insists she has self-respect, while thinking to himself that she is way too good. After all, he is a man, and it wouldn't take long for him to lose control. Of course, Kiyoe overhears his internal monologue. She laughs, amused by the contradiction between his words and thoughts. While he notices her enjoying herself, our protagonist suddenly spots Baekchuan in the hall. Immediately, he pushes her away and declares that as long as the engagement remains, she is nothing more than a stranger. Even then, he regrets instantly pushing something so perfect and stacked, but going any further would only lead to disaster. It feels like a villain's fate, to admire from a distance but never touch. Of course, she hears all of this and laughs softly, adding that our protagonist is cute. He grows frustrated, wondering why she is laughing at him. Our protagonist thinks to himself that, in the novel, the female leads don't see any man other than the main protagonist as human. Our protagonist demands to know why she was laughing. She replies that she just thought of something very funny. Fed up, our protagonist decides to leave, feeling like the storyline has become too strange. The plan is to stay far away from everyone at the banquet, including the suspicious doctor. If by chance he encounters the doctor again, he plans to fake another stomachache to escape the situation. Our protagonist is momentarily stunned when he looks back and sees Kiyui sitting on the ground claiming she fell. He struggles to understand how that's even possible considering she didn't even move an inch. Even so, it's clearly obvious she is up to something. Worst of all, things could spiral out of control because Baekchuan is watching and seems to be coming over. Meanwhile, Mao Kiyue turns to our protagonist, insisting that she needs help getting up. From the way she acts, it becomes clear she is trying to take advantage of the situation. Since our protagonist doesn't like Churon, all she needs to do is make him fall for her again. However, to her shock, our protagonist refuses. He even blames her, saying it's her fault for falling because of her heels. As he starts to leave, Mao Kiyue is left speechless after getting completely roasted by our protagonist. However, our protagonist hesitates. Although he can't get close to her, that doesn't mean he can insult her freely. If she gets annoyed and complains to Baekchuan, things could turn chaotic for him. Of course, Kiwei hears everything loud and clear. She snaps, telling our protagonist that if he doesn't come back and help her, she will get upset, and upsetting her will come with consequences. Our protagonist realizes too late that he has stepped on a landmine. With no choice, he reluctantly helps her, silently praying in his heart that she doesn't get attached. Sooner or later, she will end up as the main protagonist's side chick. As usual, she hears his thoughts, and it upsets her. She wonders what nonsense he is spouting, considering she is a noble lady of the Mao family. She can't understand how she would ever end up with a guy named Baekchuan, someone she doesn't even know. Nonetheless, our protagonist helps her. While walking, Kiyo suddenly turns to him and insists she needs support. Preferably, she wants him to hold her by the waist. She really knows how to strike at our protagonist's weak point. At that moment, the main protagonist finally approaches. He taps our protagonist, who immediately turns pale upon seeing him. Grabbing Mao Kiyoe aside, he calls our protagonist disgusting while reassuring her that nothing will happen now that he is here. Kiyoe stands there, completely confused, unable to make sense of the situation, and asks who the clown is. Suddenly, Baekchuan turns toward our protagonist and lashes out, calling him a two-faced bastard. He accuses him of being engaged to Churan while secretly flirting with other innocent women. Our protagonist is left stunned, completely clueless about what Baekchuan is talking about. Yet Baekchuan keeps yelling loudly, branding him shameless and drawing the attention of everyone at the banquet. Kiyue tries to calm him down and urges him to lower his voice. But Baekchuan refuses, insisting that our protagonist must be exposed in front of everyone so Churan can finally see his true nature. At that moment, a bald man steps forward and demands an explanation, questioning our protagonist about his connection to his sister. This man is Meo Xiaojun, Kiyoe's brother. The two lock eyes, and despite not speaking, they seem to understand each other immediately. Our protagonist quickly realizes that Baekchuan and the newcomer are involved in something suspicious. From what is known, Mao Xiaojun and Kiyu are competing for control of the Mao family. Before the banquet, her brother secretly met with the main protagonist and struck a deal. Together, they persuaded a faction of the Mao family to invest in a worthless project destined to fail. Once it collapses, Mao Xiaojun plans to seize greater power and take over the family entirely. However, Beishuan has an even more calculated scheme. Just before the project crashes, he plans to approach Qiyu, save her family and secure her loyalty, adding her to his harem. To our protagonist, all of them seem like ruthless predators. Unexpectedly, Qiyu overhears everything and is left in shock. But she reacts as if she's seeing him for the first time. The realization that her own brother is conspiring with outsiders to sabotage them hits her hard, especially knowing that their father has already invested in the doomed project. She insists she's fine but needs time alone, then turns and walks away. As she leaves, her thoughts spiral. How could our protagonist possibly know all of this? He has never shown any interest in business or investments. The only explanation she can come up with is that he has always cared about her, silently watching over her all this time. To her, it begins to feel like some kind of deep, hidden love, and the thought nearly overwhelms her. Meanwhile, Baekchuan grabs our protagonist, determined not to let him out. He demands that everything be revealed about what supposedly happened with the Mao family's daughter. Just then, Qiyu steps in, speaking furiously and defending him. She explains that he was only helping her and behaved like a perfect gentleman, urging Baekchuan to let him go. Right after that, Qiyu clings to our protagonist's arm and dismisses Baekchuan's accusations as baseless nonsense. She belittles him, pointing out that he is merely a bodyguard acting like an uncontrollable beast. Internally, our protagonist can only sigh, already sensing trouble. Things quickly escalate when Qiyu leans on him, complaining about her injured leg and asking for help. He tries to refuse, but she pinches his stomach and threatens to scream and accuse him if he doesn't comply. At that moment, it becomes clear this woman is nothing but trouble. With no other choice, he reluctantly escorts her away. As they pass by, Qiyu warns her brother that once everything is exposed, there will be consequences. Her brother is left standing there, confused and unsure of what she means. In the reception hall, our protagonist helps her sit down, but his mind is racing. The moment he leaves her side, disaster feels inevitable. However, Qiyu has no intention of letting him go. She complains that her leg still hurts and demands a massage. He hesitates, knowing that any move he makes could make Baekchuan hate him even more. Teasing him, she reminds him that it's just a massage. But calmly, she warns that if he refuses, she'll scream and accuse him of trying to assault her. He asks if she can try a different tactic this time, but ignoring him, the sly girl begins counting. Our protagonist realizes he's really in danger when she reaches one. Reminding him she will shout, he finally gives in. Our protagonist begins the massage. His movements are precise, and Qiyu starts to feel overwhelmed. Now things begin to spiral, because she is the one who started it, and our protagonist becomes fired up. She begins to tremble, breathes heavily, and reacts intensely, even insisting that he slow down. Anyway, let's leave them to do whatever they are doing. The next scene skips the garden. Baekchuan is still confused about the situation. He turns to Mao Xiaojun, questioning what is happening and accusing our protagonist of deceiving his sister. Mao Xiaojun responds calmly, asking if Baekchuan is interested in her. He explains that Qiyu admires strength and capable men, impress her, and she will naturally be drawn in. Though Baekchuan frowns, recalling how close she seemed with our protagonist, Mao Xiaojun reassures him that it means nothing. After all, Linghu is already engaged, so there is nothing to worry about. Left alone, Baekchuan clenches his teeth, convinced that all the women around our protagonist will eventually become his instead. Just then, he hears a voice from a distance. Churin's dad explains that he hadn't seen our protagonist and had asked Mao Xiaojun to introduce the doctor he brought for him. Of course, the man agrees. Seeing this, Baekchuan thinks to himself that this is the opportunity he has been waiting for. Apparently, the Tan family patriarch just fainted during the gathering, and he doesn't seem to be doing well. Churin's dad approaches Ling Hu, explaining that his uncle's condition is worsening and that they urgently need a skilled doctor. Our protagonist stood there, sweating, while the doctor noted that he understood the assignment. He started by checking the pulse. Baekchuan, standing not far away, overheard their conversation and thought that this time our protagonist was finished. The Tan patriarch's son helps his father sit up, noting with relief that he has finally regained consciousness. He explains his father's illness, adding that numerous doctors have examined him, yet none have identified the cause. Even worse, treatments that once worked are no longer effective. Desperate, he pleads for help, urging anyone with a solution not to hold back, and vows that the Tan family will remember their kindness. At that moment, Mao Xiaojun turns to Baixuan, pointing out that this man is none other than the head of the Tang family. The main protagonist is asked how confident he is in improving the elder's condition. He immediately sees through the scheme. This is clearly an attempt to use him to gain favor with the Tan family. Still, he decides to go along with it since their goals align. Calmly, he states that he can examine the pulse, but based on the old man appearance alone, the chances of a full recovery are no more than 50%. Mao Xiaojun is overjoyed regardless, praising his decision and reminding Baixuan to share the credit if the treatment succeeds. Although Baixuan is irritated by the familiar gesture, he suppresses his annoyance for now, remembering he's merely a bodyguard. So when Mao Xiaojun then urges him to step forward and begin the diagnosis, Baixuan stops him, leaving him confused. He then explains his plan to Mao Xiaojun, saying that if he cures the old man now, it wouldn't have as much impact. When someone tries and fails, especially the doctor the Zhao family brought, it creates a stronger impression. Mao Xiaojun hesitates, pointing out the risk and asking what would happen if the doctor manages to cure the disease first. But Baixuan reassures him with confidence, claiming that the man is nothing more than a fraud. If the doctor fails, their later intervention will appear even more impressive. After thinking it through, Mao Xiaojun agrees, impressed by the plan. Seizing the moment, Mao Xiaojun drags the divine doctor forward and presents him to the crowd, urging him to treat the Tan family patriarch. Relief spreads among the family members, especially his son, who expresses gratitude that help has arrived. Though hesitant, the doctor agrees to examine the patient while receiving quiet encouragement from behind. However, our protagonist feels a growing sense of dread, convinced that this entire situation will somehow fall back on him. Meanwhile, Churin's dad passionately praises the doctor's lineage, exaggerating his reputation as an unmatched healer, even comparing him to a legendary figure. Our protagonist can only complain internally, knowing that such overblown expectations will only make things worse if anything goes wrong. As the examination begins, the doctor analyzes the pulse and declares that the illness originates from the liver, with blocked meridians and internal imbalance causing the condition to worsen. Despite the grim diagnosis, he confidently assures everyone that his special acupuncture technique will resolve everything. From the side, Baixuan watches with a smirk, dismissing the method as inferior to his own. In his mind, this is merely the setup. Once the doctor fails, it will be the perfect opportunity to step in and take control of the situation. Just as the doctor begins preparing his needles, he suddenly calls Ling Hu forward. The request catches him completely off guard, panicking. He has no knowledge of medicine and cannot understand why he is being dragged into this. Yet the doctor insists, even praising him in front of everyone, claiming that Ling Hu once demonstrated exceptional medical talent by relieving pain with precise acupuncture. To Ling Hu, it is painfully obvious that this is nothing more than blatant flattery. Ignoring his hesitation, the doctor hands him a needle and instructs him to disinfect it before proceeding with the treatment, explaining each acupuncture point as he goes. Ling Hu can only follow silently, unsure of what else to do. While this unfolds, Baixuan watches with a faint smile. Then, without warning, he interrupts, pointing out that although the sequence of treatment is correct, the execution lacks sufficient strength. The comment immediately provokes the doctor, who angrily demands to know who dared to question him. Unshaken, Baixuan challenges him directly. The tension rises instantly, drawing the attention of everyone present. The patriarch's son prepares to throw Baixuan out, but Baixuan steps in and stops him, warning that removing him would mean losing their only chance to save his father. The doctor, clearly offended, insists that he is fully capable and does not need interference. Meanwhile, Ling Hu silently observes the situation, already sensing where this is heading. As usual, both Churan and Kiyoe hear his internal rant. Sure enough, the confrontation escalates into a challenge. The doctor proposes a wager: whoever successfully cures the Tan patriarch will prove their superiority. If he succeeds, Baixuan must kneel and apologize publicly, including to Ling Hu. Caught in the middle once again, Ling Hu is completely at a loss, unable to understand why he keeps getting dragged into these situations. Baixuan accepts the bet without hesitation but raises the stakes. If the doctor fails, both he and Ling Hu will have to kneel before him instead. The thought alone fills Ling Hu with dread, as he can already imagine the humiliating outcome. According to the plot, the doctor is destined to fail. His acupuncture technique is incomplete. He is missing a crucial step that involves releasing a small amount of blood, something he is entirely unaware of. With that flaw, the outcome seems inevitable. And if things continue this way, Baishuan's plan will succeed completely, leaving Ling Hu to bear the consequences. At first, it doesn't seem like the worst outcome. Kneeling and bowing isn't exactly a big deal. The real problem is that this bastard would get one step closer to collecting more beautiful women as concubines. Unfortunately for him, the girls who overhear this have absolutely no intention of becoming part of Baishuan harem. Meanwhile, the doctor inserts the final needle and calmly announces that all that remains is to remove it. Tan's son encourages his father to stand, and to everyone's surprise, the old man says he feels significantly better. The pressure in his chest has eased, and even his mind feels clearer. The crowd immediately erupts in praise, hailing the man as a true divine doctor. But our protagonist is puzzled. According to how things were supposed to unfold, this is the exact moment when the old man should cough up blood. Predictably, he does. Baishuan immediately seizes the moment, pointing out that the treatment clearly wasn't successful and declaring that the so-called divine doctor is nothing more than a fraud. Tan's son panics and begs for help, but Baishuan only sneers, becoming arrogant. He blames them for trusting the wrong person. He claims that if they had relied on him from the beginning, none of this would have happened. Then, without hesitation, he raises the stakes. Now, if they lose, Ling Hu and the doctor won't just kneel, they'll have to lick his shoe. The shocking demand leaves everyone stunned, especially the two women nearby, who exchange glances, realizing they are thinking the exact same thing. Churin burns with anger, especially after noticing that Kiyue actually seems worried about Ling Hu. Meanwhile, Baishuan steps in to comfort Churin, telling her not to waste her emotions on someone unworthy. Kiyue moves straight toward Ling Hu, as Baishuan coldly declares that this is the price for toying with the hearts of beautiful women. Kiyue immediately fires back, coldly. She questions who he thinks he is, and points out that even Churon doesn't need him. Then Churon herself steps forward, expressing confidence in the doctor. She recalls a similar case he once treated, mentioning a finishing technique that involves letting a point bleed. It sounds convincing, but Kyo can tell she's clearly making it up. Still, she plays along, claiming that she has also seen the doctor use a similar technique. Ironically, the doctor himself is confused, muttering that he has never even used such a technique before. As the old man continues coughing blood, panic spreads, but the doctor quickly regains composure, claiming that the blood is simply impurities being expelled. According to him, releasing the final drop will complete the treatment. Baishuan grows uneasy, because that actually is the correct solution. Moments later, the doctor presses a point at the back of the old man's neck. Instantly, the old man sits upright, full of energy, claiming he feels as strong as he did in his younger days. The Tan patriarch immediately thanks him and our protagonist for their help, noting that the doctor was truly remarkable. Meanwhile, Baishuan is left stunned. That exact method should have been known only to him, yet somehow it was replicated perfectly. Seizing the advantage, the doctor turns to him and demands that he kneel and admit defeat. He even pushes Ling Hu forward, insisting that Baishuan kneel before both of them. But Baishuan refuses outright, dismissing the doctor as a second-rate doctor and belittling his method. He insists that the result doesn't prove anything and mocks everyone for their ignorance. The doctor fires back immediately, pointing out that he was the one who successfully healed the old man, while Baishuan did nothing but talk. Our protagonist, on the other hand, just wants to stay out of it, hoping the conflict burns itself out without dragging him further in. However, the crowd begins whispering. From their perspective, Baishuan made bold claims but failed to deliver, while the doctor achieved results. Just like that, the tide of opinion quickly turns against him. Furious, Baishuan decides to act. Given his current situation, Baishuan decides to use a bit of his heavenly technique, confident that after doing so, Churin will happily choose to become his wife. Because of this, he channels his energy, and a powerful aura begins to swirl around him. The crowd gasps in surprise, recognizing that this is no ordinary display. A smarter man recognizes it as a rare and powerful technique called the Heavenly Flower Spiritual Gathering Needles. He never expected to see a user in his lifetime. Meanwhile, our protagonist watches this, can only grind his teeth. It's obvious this flashy display is meant to distract everyone from the fact that he was supposed to kneel. Still, it's undeniably effective. Anyone watching should be impressed. Yet, strangely, when he looks toward the two women, they aren't focused on Baeksuan at all. They're staring at him. Before he can make sense of it, the two lock eyes, seemingly realizing that they can both hear his thoughts. Suddenly, Kiyo clings to Ling Hu, teasing him for constantly looking her way. Churan immediately snaps back, calling her shameless. Meanwhile, the doctor and Baeksuan begin glaring at each other. Just as the tension starts to escalate, Mao Xiaojun steps in, praising both Baeksuan's and the doctor's abilities and suggesting that there's no need to continue the argument. Surely he hopes the doctor will let this slide. But the doctor refuses to back down, insisting that Baeksuan shouldn't be allowed to walk away after acting so arrogantly. However, Mao Xiaojun laughs it off, treating the whole situation like entertainment and suggesting they drop it altogether. Before things can spiral further, Tan Patriarch himself interrupts, thanking everyone for their efforts and expressing his gratitude, effectively bringing the conflict to a halt. In the background, Ling Hu reflects that Baeksuan managed to escape consequences thanks to timely intervention. If the roles had been reversed, things would have ended far worse. Baeksuan scans the room and finally relaxes, realizing the outcome wasn't as bad as expected. He then approaches Churan, trying to explain his earlier behavior, admitting that his emotions got the better of him, but she steps back, coldly stating that he owes her no explanation. That response hits him hard. Grabbing her shoulder, he explains that, although he may be only a bodyguard for now, he has no intention of staying one forever. In addition, he believes that one day he will be able to provide her with wealth and luxury. From the side, our protagonist quietly listens, catching every single word. Baeksuan continues, claiming that everything he has done was for Churan. All his efforts meant to shine in her eyes and build a better future together. She questions him, asking if it's truly all for her. Without hesitation, he swears it is, even saying that if he had been given the chance to treat the old man himself, he would have felt completely fulfilled. Listening from a distance, Ling Hu can only scoff internally. To him, it sounds like nothing more than a desperate obsession with power. Despite the earlier humiliation, Baeksuan still spins everything, acting as though it was all for Churan's sake. However, Churan hears those very thoughts. In that instant, everything becomes clear. What seemed like heartfelt sincerity is nothing more than calculated manipulation. Without that realization, she might have truly believed him. Seeing this, Ling Hu's thoughts drift elsewhere. If she chooses to follow Baeksuan and become part of his harem, that is her decision. After all, she had already wanted to end the engagement. In other words, he doesn't need to treat her like his wife, but the mere mention of wife triggers Churan. Baeksuan notices the shift in her expression and asks what's wrong. Her demeanor turns cold as she reminds him of the wager. They had agreed that the loser would kneel publicly. There is no walking away from that. Baeksuan freezes, unable to believe what she just said. Our protagonist mirrors the same shock, unable to understand why Churan is acting this way and suspecting that she is deliberately provoking him. Of course, she hears his thoughts inwardly. Our protagonist insists that she stop looking at him and focus on Baeksuan. Because of this, she repeats the condition, stating that the losers must kneel. Baeksuan struggles to accept it, questioning whether she truly expects him to kneel before someone like Ling Hu. Meanwhile, Ling Hu begins to feel as if fate itself is forcing the story back onto its original path, undoing all his efforts to avoid disaster. Without realizing it, he tightens his grip on Kiyo's hand. She misreads the gesture entirely as expected. She thinks our protagonist still loves her. Churan notices immediately, her gaze sharpening before she calls Ling Hu over, stating that Baeksuan has admitted defeat and asking how long it will take for our protagonist to realize it before everyone starts making fun of him. Interestingly enough, Baeksuan thinks Churan is doing this for him. He is convinced that she isn't angry and is only acting to protect his reputation, ensuring he doesn't appear dishonorable in front of others. Grateful, he places a hand on his chest and thanks her for preserving his dignity. As usual, she realizes a bit too late that the guy has misunderstood her intentions. Turning to our protagonist, he clarifies that the kneeling is for Churan's sake, not his. As he begins to lower himself, panic hits instantly. Ling Hu reacts without thinking, pulling Kiyue in front of him as a shield. There's no way he can allow the protagonist to humiliate himself because of him. Surviving that would be impossible. Kiyo unintentionally hits our protagonist on the chest. but he clutches it dramatically, pretending to have a stomach ache, and makes a sudden dash for the bathroom. Right then, the system appears, congratulating him for surviving yet another part of the story. The word survived throws him off completely. Before any answers come, reality itself distorts. The space around him twists, and he is suddenly dragged into a void. When his vision clears, he finds himself lying on a bed. The system speaks again, informing him that he now has 3 full days to rest and prepare for the next mission. Still disoriented, he drinks some water and asks about his reward. The system displays the result, 2,333 points. That number only fuels his frustration. After everything he went through, the reward feels insultingly low. The system calmly explains that the scoring is fair and based on performance. He understands that much. But another question matters more. How many of these stories must be completed before returning to the real world? The answer is far worse than expected. His death in reality, caused by a falling billboard, can only be reversed by purchasing a resurrection. The cost, 88,888 points. The moment that number is revealed, our protagonist explodes in frustration. At the current rate of earning, it would take thousands of completed stories to reach that total. Factoring in the 3-day rest period between each one, the timeline becomes unbearable. At that point, giving up starts to sound more appealing than continuing. The system encourages him to be persistent, explaining that better performance leads to higher rewards. But the motivation is gone. He collapses back onto the bed, declaring that he no longer even cares about going back. 3 days later, everything shifts again. With a flash of light, our protagonist awakens in a completely different setting and in a different body. He can't help but complain about the messy process of transitioning into a new novel. He is startled when someone calls his name, pointing directly at him. Confused, he doesn't understand what the man is referring to, blaming the Sue family for his heartbreak. Seeing his lack of response, the man shakes him frantically, snapping him back to awareness. Just as the system announces that the new story has been synchronized. This time, it's a historical setting. Today marks the wedding of Ling Hu, the villain of this story, to the woman he loves, Su Huaning. However, things have already gone wrong. Though the marriage was arranged between their families, the bride has been taken at the last moment by the story's protagonist, a man named Ning Yi. Interrupting our protagonist's thoughts, his second uncle, Ling Hu Shang, insists that all their efforts cannot go to waste. His cousin, Ling Hu Tian, suggests reclaiming his bride from the Su family and even killing Ning Yi. Attempting to calm the situation, their third uncle, Ling Hu Gang, urges everyone to stay composed. Meanwhile, his brother, our protagonist's father, and the patriarch, Ling Hu Feng, share their perspective. Both families have been close for generations, and his son and the Su family's daughter were childhood sweethearts. He cannot understand how things ended up like this. Our protagonist's second uncle immediately argues with his elder brother, pointing out that the Su family has already broken their promise. There is no reason to cling to sentiment. If the Su family no longer respects the bond between the two families, he suggests that the Ling Hu family should sever ties completely. Now fully caught up with the story, our protagonist can only think to himself that this entire discussion is foolish. The Su family is on the verge of dominating the entire region's negotiations, all because of Ning Yi's future rise. In time, merchants across the Tiangshuan region will be lining up to curry favor with him. Trying to punish the Su family now would only be an act of pure stupidity. Unexpectedly, as these thoughts ran through our protagonist's mind, everyone could hear them. Regardless, he continues thinking. Losing his first love isn't the end of the world. In fact, Ning Yi seems like a decent person. His family suffered greatly, and his family only made things worse for him. If he hadn't been pushed so far, he might never have turned against everyone. At this rate, his family is heading straight toward becoming villains. No, they already are. The entire room falls into an awkward silence. Each person has clearly heard something they weren't meant to, as if a hidden truth had just been exposed. Everyone fidgets, quickly trying to shift the conversation. Meanwhile, our protagonist's cousin wonders what is happening. Ling Hu's father breaks the tension by suggesting they drop the issue entirely. He asks for Ling Hu's opinion. Without hesitation, Ling Hu agrees. There is no point stressing over something so trivial. It would be better to act maturely and simply wish the couple happiness. However, our protagonist's cousin questions his sincerity, pointing out that there's no need to put on a brave front when no outsiders are present. Ling Hu calmly places a hand on his chest and insists that his words are genuine. There is no need to pretend. With that, he casually announces that it's late and he plans to bathe and rest, while secretly thinking to himself that the sooner the argument ends, the better. Once again, everyone hears every word. Confused, his cousin begins to question whether that voice was truly Ling Hu's thoughts or something else entirely. Sensing the growing discomfort, the second uncle abruptly ends the meeting and dismisses everyone, thinking that some secrets cannot be revealed and are best left unannounced. Meanwhile, our protagonist's father is left deeply unsettled, wondering if hearing his son's voice meant that his son was somehow possessed. Back in his room, Ling Hu collapses onto the bed, relieved to finally rest. But something feels off. The system has been unusually silent. It only mentioned that the plot was synchronized and then disappeared. He tries calling out to it, but there is no response. That silence makes it clear something isn't right. The next scene shifts to the gardens of the Ling Hu estate. A woman tugs at Tian's arm, urging him to study, but he dismisses her completely. In his eyes, books are pointless. As the second young master of the family, he believes he was born superior and has no need for such things. The boy's mom insists that studying the wisdom of sages is essential, especially if he wants to avoid being mocked in the future. But he refuses, brushing her off without a second thought. Meanwhile, our protagonist is fast asleep when Tian suddenly knocks. He wonders why the boy would come to see him at this hour. In response, Ling Hu Tian enters the room, loudly scolding him for resting while the entire family is being mocked. Completely unbothered, Ling Hu drops back onto the bed, uninterested. His cousin continues, relaying the harsh rumors spreading outside. Some call him the Su family's discarded trash. Others claim the bride would rather marry a nobody than someone as worthless as him. The insults grow even more ridiculous, with people saying he's filthy and doesn't even bathe properly. Our protagonist doesn't respond. Instead, he reflects on Tian's situation. Despite his noble background and good looks, he has been spoiled beyond saving. If nothing changes, his future is already set, wasting his life on indulgence before meeting a miserable end when the family eventually falls apart. By that time, the scholars he once mocked make a display of him. Our protagonist can only think that this brother is beyond saving. He had successfully traumatized him with that bombshell, before casually telling him to relax and go enjoy himself. Because of this, Tian suddenly declares that he has no interest in wasting his life anymore. From now on, he will dedicate himself to studying and prove his worth. With that vow, he storms off in tears, determined to change. Left behind, Ling Hu can only stare in confusion, wondering what just happened. After some time, our protagonist becomes bothered that the system hasn't appeared. Without the system, he doesn't even know his mission. Basically, he has no idea how to proceed. Because of this, he decides to stick to the original plot for now. Not long after, a servant arrives with news. An invitation has come from the Su family. Curious, Ling Hu asks for details. The servant explains that a young lady personally delivered it and invited him to dinner at Zuixian restaurant. Now completely puzzled, Ling Hu wonders who it could be. Aside from Su Huaning, the bride who abandoned him, no one from that family should have any reason to reach out. In the end, Ling Hu agrees to go. At the entrance of the Ling Hu family estate, someone is already waiting. From the elegant figure alone, it is clear that this is not Su Huaning. He walks closer, nervously fixing his clothes, and asks about the dinner invitation and its purpose. The girl turns slightly and addresses him as young master. That instantly makes him freeze. Something feels very familiar. It is the same girl from the other story. Both of them realize it at the same time and are confused about why they are seeing each other here. Our protagonist doesn't understand what's happening. The girl, obviously Mao Qiwei, notices his strange behavior and asks why he looks so nervous, suspecting he might be pretending not to recognize her. Trying to cover it up, Lingu awkwardly asks if she was the one who delivered the dinner invitation at Zuixian. She confirms it, but then questions his reaction, pointing out that this is not their first meeting, so his shock makes no sense. Meanwhile, she plans to tease him since he is pretending not to know her. Keeping up the act, our protagonist claims he was just startled and momentarily forgot that their families were close. Because of this, Qi Yue suddenly grabs his arm, commenting that his current green outfit looks much better than the black one with gold trim he wore before. That immediately shocks him. Our protagonist realizes she is talking about the outfit he wore in the previous novel. Worse, the system isn't responding. Since she is the female lead from that novel, he can't understand why she is here. Of course, Kyo overhears his thoughts. She tells him to stop pretending, asking if he really thinks changing his outfit would stop her from recognizing him. For some reason, the baddie is furious about our protagonist's relationship with Su Huining. He is shocked when he hears this. Immediately, he grabs her and tells her to keep her voice down, promising to explain everything. Kyo finds this behavior strange and asks if he is stupid enough to sneak someone into his own house. Unbeknownst to them, our protagonist's parents see everything. Both of them watch in utter confusion. Our protagonist's dad wonders if he is seeing things, but his wife assures him he isn't. She points out that their son just grabbed Miss Kiyue, who turns out to be Su Huaning's cousin, in the hallway. His dad then wonders when and how the two of them got together, and his wife replies that she just found out today as well. This makes his dad furious, and he plans to confront his son, but his wife stops him. Although they know their son, Miss Kiyue isn't married, and they don't have the full picture of their relationship. Realizing this could ruin her reputation, his dad asks his wife what they should do. However, their conversation is interrupted when our protagonist's cousin's mother rushes in, panicking. She reveals that her son, who hated studying, suddenly ran to his teacher. Even more shocking, he claims he wants to study hard, become a scholar, and pass the imperial exam. Our protagonist's parents are momentarily stunned. Meanwhile, inside Tian's room, the instructor is furious. The kid keeps muttering about learning and manifestation, but forgets what he is saying midway. At this point, the instructor is determined to earn every bit of his salary. Meanwhile, his father's concubine watches and finds it amusing, calling him a good-for-nothing. She assumes this is just another one of his schemes to get more money from his parents, clearly not wanting him to improve. We finally shift to our protagonist's room. After shutting the door, he demands that Kyo explain how she became Su Huaning's cousin. Kyo admits she doesn't fully understand. One moment, she was in the Tan family hotel, and the next, she fainted and woke up at Su Huaning's wedding as her cousin. Pacing around the room, our protagonist wonders how this is even possible. The system isn't responding, and Kiyue is a character from another novel. Switching the topic, Kiyue asks if he has any interest in Su Huaning. Our protagonist asks if she thinks he is stupid enough to be interested in the main protagonist's woman, especially since she is already married. Kyo remains skeptical, recalling how, in the previous novel, he kept causing trouble for Baekchuan while flirting with Churan, the main protagonist's woman. Our protagonist's mind glitches for a moment. Mao Kyo just said the previous novel. He wonders if she knows she is a character in that novel, and she overhears that thought. She nods, confirming it's exactly what he's thinking. Then she reveals that she can hear all his thoughts. Seeing his reaction, she chuckles. To his shock, she confirms she can hear every single one of his unfiltered thoughts and complaints. Our protagonist reflects on everything that happened in the previous novel. At first, he thinks QA is just talking nonsense, but she laughs and admits she isn't making anything up. As expected, our protagonist thinks to himself that, as the female lead, her smile is very beautiful. She hears this and wonders if he only likes seeing her smile, or if that's the only thing he likes about her and nothing else. At that point, our protagonist realizes she can hear his thoughts. He concludes that this must be her cheat ability. Meanwhile, his own system is underdeveloped and full of loopholes, which is causing him trouble. She hears this too, and decides he can think whatever he wants. Poking him, she asks if he only brought her into his room in broad daylight, just to leave her there while he spaces out. That's when our protagonist stops her, making her question where the person who found her hot went back at the Tan family hotel. Leaning closer, she admits she feels restless now that the two of them are alone. Leaning in even closer, she teases him, asking if he wants a taste of this cookie. This is when our protagonist stops her. He reminds her that although he played the role of her boyfriend in the last story, it was just acting. He wasn't the one who truly had a romantic relationship with her. Hearing this, Kiyue chuckles softly before revealing she doesn't care about that idiot who dumped her. What matters now is that the two of them are alone in his room, and she wonders what he plans to do with her. Our protagonist finds it hard to resist, especially since she keeps moving closer. Kiyue chuckles as he tries to hold himself back. She describes their situation as him being the mountain while she is the cloud and rain. Our protagonist warns her that if she keeps playing around, someone might get hurt. In response, she tells him to worry about himself. Since this novel isn't a harem type like the previous one, our protagonist decides that playing along with Kyo should be fine. Confident now, he decides it's finally time to stop holding back. After all, she asked for it. After exchanging a few moves, Kyuye starts to get a bit exhausted. Apparently, she keeps hearing our protagonist's thoughts and everything he plans to do with her. Our protagonist finds this favorable, adding that he's only just getting started. Let's leave them to continue whatever chemistry they're developing. We kick off the next chapter with our protagonist finally getting laid. Kyuye asks him about the experience, while he notes that the girl wasn't human and really took a lot out of him. Of course, she's happy that he was satisfied. Still, she reminds him that they need to get to the restaurant, pointing out that everyone must already be waiting. Our protagonist looks at himself and thinks, today is supposed to be the day he meets the main protagonist, yet his body aches, and he's covered in bite marks, making him consider not going at all. Of course, that thought dies instantly when Kyu hears him and threatens that they'll do it all over again if he doesn't get up. Anyway, the next scene takes us to the restaurant, where the Su family has already made reservations. At the same time, our protagonist locks eyes with his supposed childhood sweetheart. Su Huining gasps in surprise upon seeing him. Our protagonist panics at the way she looks at him. She's a married woman. If the main protagonist suspects anything, he won't be able to clear his name. Kyo-A, of course, hears everything and just laughs, leaving the poor Su Huining completely confused. Anyway, our protagonist's parents, together with Su Huining's parents, are already seated. Su Huining herself looks stacked, though the artist throws in some shade for her troubles. Seeing this, our protagonist realizes it looks more like a family gathering, and that they're late. His father tells him that if he knows that, he should sit down already and stop fooling around. At that moment, someone speaks from behind, insisting that our protagonist's dad shouldn't be so harsh. The speaker turns out to be the main protagonist, Ning Yi. Our protagonist is momentarily surprised to see the man who will soon dominate the business world. From the lore, Ning Yi is the sole survivor of the Ning family, which was burned down. In addition, the Su family patriarch took him in, arranged his marriage with Su Huining, and made him a live-in son-in-law. Regardless, Ning Yi pays his respects to our protagonist, expressing admiration for his long-standing relationship with Su Huining, while noting that it's a pity he didn't attend their wedding. Our protagonist immediately understands what he's getting at. He replies politely, while thinking that the Ning Yi from the novel is supposedly a transmigrator from the modern era, just like him. The only problem is, he doesn't know exactly which time period Ning Yi came from. Anyway, Ning Yi speaks politely, and on the surface, it seems like this meeting is meant to clear up any misunderstandings between their families. But in reality, he's testing our protagonist to see if he still has feelings for Su Huining, and whether his family holds any grudges. Since Ning Yi is the main protagonist, destined to dominate the business world, our protagonist simply laughs. He firmly explains that there is no misunderstanding, adding that Ning Yi and Su Huining are perfect for each other. He assures Ning Yi that the only reason he missed the wedding was because he was ill, before adding that he would have loved to witness it firsthand in full 24K. Ning Yi immediately senses something off. To test his suspicion, he responds with a proverb from modern times. The moment our protagonist replies, casually revealing he understands it, both men realize the truth. They've been talking to someone just like themselves this whole time. In that instant, they reach a silent understanding. Meanwhile, Su Huining watches them, completely lost on what they're even talking about. Kyo simply tells her that some things just can't be explained. Because of this, Ning Yi grabs our protagonist and asks both families for permission, insisting that the two of them need to settle something privately, leaving both families utterly speechless. The next scene takes us to the courtyard, where our protagonist and the main protagonist of the novel stand in silence for a moment. Ning Yi is the first to speak, admitting he never imagined he would die like that. He explains that he was a top business student at Harvard, and that his life was cut short after stepping out for a late-night snack, only to get stabbed in a deserted alley. Our protagonist finds it just as tragic and shares his own ending. After chatting with a girl online for 8 months, he finally agrees to meet her, only to get crushed by a falling billboard on his way to the date. Hearing this, Ning Yi explains that he was transmigrated here and ended up possessing the body of an orphan whose entire family had been wiped out, eventually becoming the live-in son-in-law of the Su family. Our protagonist then explains his own situation, revealing that he was brought into this world with a villain system that constantly forces him into villain roles. Ning Yi finds this impressive. If what our protagonist says is true, then it means he knows the entire plot, basically a full walkthrough. But our protagonist shuts that idea down, saying there's nothing great about it. After all, the story ends with his family being destroyed and himself dying. The mood instantly turns heavy, and both of them fall into silence. Because of this, our protagonist directly asks Ning Yi if he's planning to kill him. But Ning Yi shakes his head, saying he's actually counting on him. Since our protagonist is the villain and knows the plot, he could be a huge advantage. That's when our protagonist shares his real concern. He knows he's supposed to be the villain, but if he doesn't play that role, the storyline could completely derail and everything might collapse, especially now that he doesn't even have the system backing him up. Meanwhile, Ning Yi starts thinking, if our protagonist isn't acting as the villain, then could there be another one out there? Both of them are left stuck in a dilemma, unsure of what to do next. Meanwhile, inside the restaurant, Su Huining grows impatient, wondering what's taking so long. Unable to wait any longer, she decides to check on them herself. As she approaches, she notices our protagonist's side profile and immediately assumes the worst. They must be arguing. Without hesitation, she grabs Ning Yi and demands that our protagonist explain exactly what he wants. She completely misunderstands the situation, thinking our protagonist is still pestering her. Ning Yi quickly tries to reassure her, explaining that it's all just a misunderstanding and that they were simply chatting. He even adds that our protagonist has no feelings for her. Surprisingly, our protagonist plays along and agrees. However, she isn't convinced. She questions why they would talk for so long if this is their first meeting, and even wonders if our protagonist threatened him. Ning Yi denies it, but he obviously can't explain that they're both characters inside a novel. Seizing the moment, our protagonist swears that he has no feelings for her. He even goes as far as saying that if he does, heaven can strike him down with thunder. Deep down, he reminds himself that while the original villain may have loved her, he's different. He just transmigrated into this story. Still skeptical, Su Huining listens as our protagonist continues. He assures her that even if there were past marriage arrangements, that's all behind them now. She has already found herself a good husband and he couldn't be happier for her. Pulling Ning Yi closer, he adds that they've already talked, and that Ning Yi has been going on about how well he plans to treat her. Ning Yi, of course, plays along. The two of them act like lifelong friends, casually brushing everything off and leaving Su Huining completely speechless. In the end, Ning Yi quickly urges his wife to head back inside so they can eat, giving our protagonist a subtle thumbs up before leaving. Our protagonist lets out a sigh of relief, thinking he's finally aligned himself with the main protagonist and no longer has to worry about getting killed. Back inside, the family resumes their conversation. Ning Yi and Su Huaning return just in time as the Su family patriarch stands up, revealing that he has something important to say. After the Su family patriarch finishes discussing with his daughter, he raises his glass to the protagonist's father, hoping the meeting has cleared the misunderstanding between both families. The protagonist's father agrees and even offers support if the Su family ever needs it in the future. Meanwhile, the protagonist's mother stares at Kyoe and gives her a wink, leaving the girl both flustered and confused. At the same time, the protagonist thinks to himself that experience truly comes with age. His father had been swearing and cursing the Su family earlier, yet now he is acting as if nothing ever happened. Anyway, the gathering finally ends, and it is time for both families to leave. Just then, Ning Yi approaches the protagonist, and both of them agree to resume their discussion later when they are free. Before leaving, Kyoe gestures to the protagonist, reminding him to call her. The protagonist wonders why she would do that while he is standing right next to his parents. Because of this, his mother immediately grabs him by the ear. Now inside the carriage, his father calmly asks, since it has come to this point, if his son has anything to tell them. However, the protagonist's mother has already smacked her foolish son on the head, while his father acts as a mediator, trying to smooth things over. The next scene shifts to the protagonist's room. He keeps calling the system, but it does not respond. The protagonist worries that his current actions might cause changes in the plot. Without the system's aid, it feels as if he is driving blind. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted by the cry of a baby as someone announces that the princess has given birth. At that moment, the protagonist remembers that at this point in the story, his third uncle's wife, Princess Chen Yang, gives birth. Just as he starts to relax, he suddenly remembers something important. The protagonist recalls that in the original plot, the baby suddenly dies. As a result, the princess never recovers from the stress, allowing his third uncle's mistress to take her place. If that happens, things will fall apart, causing the royal family to hate his own family, which eventually accelerates the downfall of the Linghu family. In other words, the protagonist cannot allow the baby to die. Fortunately, he is not too late. The midwife is clearly making plans to strangle the baby when she suddenly senses someone behind her. She turns around, only to be kicked by the protagonist. At the same time, the protagonist catches the baby. Only then does he finally breathe a sigh of relief. With that, he furiously demands to know what the woman is doing, sneaking around with a child. Shocked by the protagonist's sudden appearance, the midwife quickly comes up with an excuse. She insists that he has misunderstood the situation and suggests that he hand over the baby. The protagonist responds by asking what exactly he misunderstood. The midwife then points out that the baby was not crying and claims the child did not survive. In her mind, she even thinks it would be better if the child dies in the protagonist's arms. Because of this, the protagonist decides to say farewell to his niece. To the woman's shock, he suddenly begins to smack the child. Of course, the child immediately starts crying. Seeing this, the midwife thinks the protagonist is a complete lunatic. Because of that, she quickly escapes. After calming the crying baby, the protagonist heads to the delivery room. A female servant tries to stop him, insisting that it is not the right time for a visit. The protagonist tells them he has brought the baby to see her mother. The group thinks he has gone mad, considering they believe the child is already dead and the princess is heartbroken. Ignoring them, the protagonist walks straight inside. The moment he enters, his uncle, who is trying to comfort his wife, asks what he is doing. The protagonist does not respond. Instead, he hands the baby to the princess. This only makes her cry even more, while his uncle continues acting like a supportive husband. Interrupting them, the protagonist insists that the baby is not dead. His third uncle immediately becomes furious and reprimands him. Seeing the princess still crying in confusion, the protagonist wonders how she could believe the words of a strange midwife about her daughter's death. He even thinks that perhaps she lost a few brain cells during childbirth. As usual, whenever he roasts someone in his thoughts, they can hear it. Hopeless, the protagonist tells them to check for themselves. They finally confirm that the baby is truly alive. The princess gasps in joy, in sharp contrast to her husband, who shows no reaction at first. However, his composure cracks when he asks how this is even possible since the child had stopped breathing. He even suggests that his wife might be hallucinating from stress. At first, the princess does not understand what is happening, but she soon realizes that the midwife was suspicious. Watching this, the protagonist feels relieved, thinking that he might have just saved his own life. Just then, his uncle moves to hold the baby, but the princess immediately pushes him aside. She questions how he could fail as a father and be so easily deceived while she was in a vulnerable state. She bluntly tells him he has no right to hold the child, leaving him speechless. The man can only glare at the protagonist for causing all of this. Turning back to his wife, he decides to leave and return the next day, but she is already done with him. Later in his room, he writes a letter informing someone that the protagonist interfered with the plan and that the princess is now suspicious. A messenger pigeon lands somewhere in the city, and the figure receiving the message finds this development troublesome and begins thinking of alternative plans. We shift back to our protagonist, who decides to leave since the baby is fine. However, before leaving, he turns to take one more look at the princess, more specifically the milk factory. Our protagonist leaves, thinking to himself that the baby will really have a lot to enjoy. Later, our protagonist meets his cousin. He is shocked to see the boy being serious with his studies. Just then, his father's healthy concubine appears, announcing that she brought the boy's favorite snacks. Tian politely suggests she leave them on the table and that he will eat after studying. However, the woman signals to the maid with her, and the girl immediately takes Tian's brush. Meanwhile, our protagonist silently observes what's happening. He thinks to himself that he finally understands who and how his cousin ended up spoiled. In addition, she is deliberately doing this to prevent him from improving. Of course, his cousin hears his thoughts and begins to understand the concubine's intentions. She then approaches and suggests he reduce his study time, adding that it is harming his health. Tian thinks to himself that if he hadn't been enlightened, he would have been fooled by her kind gesture. Seeing this, our protagonist decides to leave, but he overhears his cousin asking if his father's concubine wants to know why he studies so hard. Our protagonist immediately runs back, waiting to hear the reason for his sudden change. Tian explains that he had a dream where he encountered a great immortal. He ignored the warning and followed his father's concubine. In the end, he died, and his family was destroyed. In addition, he notes that the dream felt incredibly real. Because of this, the woman tries to reassure him, saying she was simply worried about his health. Seeing that the boy isn't buying her act anymore, she becomes furious and decides to leave. After she leaves, Tien asks our protagonist for his opinion on how he handled the situation. Our protagonist gives him a thumbs up, while secretly wondering how the boy knew he was watching from the window. A few days later, the system finally comes online. Our protagonist is momentarily relieved, and soon starts complaining to it, but the system suddenly disappears mid-sentence, leaving him stunned as a cloaked figure approaches. The person turns out to be the princess, so our protagonist naturally asks why she is dressed like that. She responds by thanking him. She notes that she wasn't able to thank him last time. Without his intervention, she and her daughter would have been separated. Our protagonist insists she didn't need to lower herself. After all, they are family, while thinking to himself that the princess is truly beautiful, easily among the top 3 beauties in the country, if not number 1. He also thinks his uncle is foolish for choosing his mistress over her. Of course, the princess hears his thoughts and is left stunned. Our protagonist asks why she is shaking. Now, the princess understands why the midwife acted strangely, realizing this was all part of her husband's plan. Another of our protagonist's thoughts is captured. He thinks his uncle is already planning his next step with his mistress to make the princess fall sick and kick her out of the family. He knows he can't tell her because she would die of heartbreak, but the princess simply thanks him and swears to repay his kindness one day. Our protagonist wonders why she suddenly decided to leave, questioning whether he said something wrong. The princess steps out of the Linghu residence and immediately asks her servant if she remembers what she was told last night. The servant nods, saying she will keep an eye on our protagonist's third uncle. Satisfied, the princess dismisses her and says she is heading to the imperial palace. The scene then shifts to the imperial palace. Inside, a maid compliments another princess on her outfit, saying it suits her very well. The princess replies that it's only natural. Just then, a eunuch rushes in, announcing that Princess Chen Yang has arrived and is requesting an audience. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Su clothing shop. It is finally the day our protagonist is going to meet Ning Yi. As he enters, a group of girls unanimously greets him, asking if he would like to try their products. Our protagonist notes that even though he had imagined the place would be impressive, seeing it in person is still shocking. The girls begin promoting their latest products, but he shows no interest. Each of them insists he try on their new clothing, leaving him feeling awkward. He can't help but wonder where Ning Yi even found so many girls. Just then, a voice interrupts him. When he turns around, someone tosses a piece of clothing at him. He looks up and realizes it's Kiyo. He asks what she is doing there, and she casually replies that she came shopping. Now seated, she asks what he thinks about her outfit. Flustered, our protagonist asks what she wants from him. She reminds him that she told him to contact her before, but he never did. So whatever happens now is his fault. As she says this, she rests her leg between his thighs. Unable to hold back any longer, our protagonist pulls her close and kisses her, then asks if she knows what is about to happen. She teasingly asks if he's scared. Just as things seem to be going smoothly for him, a voice suddenly calls his name. Our protagonist realizes it is the main protagonist. Just like that, he misses his chance and feels a bit frustrated by the terrible timing. At that moment, Ning Yi appears behind him, saying he finally found him and urging him to come outside because something interesting is happening. Our protagonist can only think to himself that the guy must be foolish. Someone is causing trouble in his shop, yet he wants to go watch instead. The next scene takes us outside, where Ning Yi's wife is confronting someone. The newcomer casually suggests she shouldn't be angry. Turns out, this guy is Mu Rongyi, the eldest son of the Murong family. He confidently offers to take her in, insisting she shouldn't be stubborn. He even goes as far as saying she married a good-for-nothing and is now stuck living a life of struggle. Our protagonist immediately likes the setup, thinking this guy is perfectly stepping into the villain role. Meanwhile, the main protagonist gets visibly upset. He thinks he can endure being humiliated himself, but insulting his wife is crossing the line. Just as he's about to step in, our protagonist stops him, telling him to trust in his wife's strength, and right on cue, Su Huining fires back. She asks that if her husband is a good-for-nothing, then what exactly does that make Mu Rongyi? She hits him with a brutal combo, pot-belly, pig-head, buck-toothed freak. Not entirely sure what all that translates to, but yeah, definitely top-tier roast in Chinese. Our protagonist can't help but laugh, thinking Ning Yi's wife is actually terrifying. Meanwhile, Ning Yi calmly praises his wife, saying she excels at anything she sets her mind to. Our protagonist watches this and realizes that being around a lovesick fool is truly exhausting. That's when Mu Rongyi snaps. He shouts that the only reason he ever wanted to marry her was because of their family ties. Our protagonist's eyes widen immediately. He quickly realizes the system might be trying to correct the plot. Ever since his arrival, things have been shifting. It's almost like the system is actively trying to reassign the villain role. And right now, Mu Rongyi is looking like the perfect replacement. Meanwhile, Mu Rongyi keeps yelling at Ning Yi's wife, going way too far this time. At this point, Ning Yi has had enough. Our protagonist tries to stop him, but before he can do anything, Ning Yi moves first. He steps forward, grabs Mu Rongyi's arm, and twists it hard. A loud scream follows. Guards from the Murong mansion rush in immediately ready to attack. But Mu Rongyi stops them. He grits his teeth and demands to know if Ning Yi really dares to lay hands on him. Ning Yi doesn't back down. He steps in front of his wife and coldly warns that if Mo Rong doesn't leave now, the next hit won't just be his arm, it'll cost him his teeth. Mu Rongyi has no choice but to retreat, but not without throwing out a threat as he leaves. As the tension dies down, someone casually comments that Mu Rongyi just shot himself in the foot. That line instantly catches our protagonist's attention, because yeah, that exact line exists in the original plot. Now he's really starting to think. Since he aligned himself with the main protagonist, did the system shift the villain role to the Murong family's young master? Or is the real villain still someone else entirely? Just thinking about it is already exhausting. Suddenly, Kiyue appears behind him, snapping him out of his thoughts. He's startled and asks when she even got there. Ignoring that, Kiyue brings up something odd about the main protagonist. She points out that his business methods feel way too modern, and even his fighting style seems different. Our protagonist nods, asking if she's noticed anything else. Kiyue adds that the way he treats her cousin very well, completely different from someone she knows. Our protagonist understands what she means, admitting that he can't do anything, he only knows how to be rough. That earns him a light kick. Kiyue tells him to cut the dirty jokes. As she walks off, she casually says she's too lazy to argue right now, and that they can talk another time. Left alone again, our protagonist reflects on everything. Ning Yi might be a transmigrator, but he still belongs to this novel. Kiyu, on the other hand, she's from a completely different story. And that raises a much bigger question. How did she even end up here? Later, the following day, our protagonist drags Kiyua along and heads to his room. His parents watch as the two of them argue playfully on the way. Our protagonist's mom is impressed that her son managed to get involved with Kiyue without any help from the Su family. In response, her husband tells her not to be short-sighted. He explains that the Mao family is different and that Mao Kiyue's grandfather is General Mao Shun, a well-known supporter of the second prince. Not to mention, their own family is part of the first and crown prince's faction, so he naturally wonders what the prince will do if he learns about this. However, his wife thinks he is simply overthinking it. A faction dispute can't happen because of just two people. Our protagonist's dad can only sigh, seeing that she doesn't understand the point. Anyway, his wife reminds him that Princess Chen Yang is planning a moon celebration for her baby. Because of this, our protagonist's dad remembers his third brother and immediately feels a headache coming on. Unsurprisingly, his wife adds that if a conflict between his third brother and the princess breaks out, he will definitely side with the princess. Speaking of the princess, she suddenly receives some news. Her personal servant confirms her suspicion. Apparently, they have discovered the location of her husband's mistress. Seeing her reaction, the servant asks if she is all right. She dismisses the concern and asks if she discovered anything else. What comes next is shocking. The servant reveals that the mistress also gave birth on the same day the princess delivered and was unhappy that our protagonist's uncle wasn't present. Worse, to calm his mistress, he promised to find a way to remove the princess and make the mistress his official wife. Chen Yang didn't expect her husband to be this cruel. It seems everything is falling into place. Her baby was taken to make her fall ill, and with her weakened state, her husband could easily deal with her, claiming she died of heartbreak. Worst of all, this is the doing of the man she loved. Regardless, she thanks our protagonist. Without him, she's not sure she would even be standing here. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to our protagonist's room. Kiyue expresses annoyance that he brought her there only to remain silent. Right now, she was actually looking forward to playing Smash Bros. Our protagonist stops her. Seeing that he's ready to talk, she asks what he wants. Scratching his head, he asks if by any chance she came into the novel with a system. She replies no. Then he asks if she entered the novel with anything that could affect the plot. She explains that she just happened to find herself in a different world. Our protagonist notes that this is quite different and nothing like his own case. Because of this, he asks about Churan, noting that she was also a female lead in the previous novel. Of course, Kyo gets upset when her name is mentioned. Our protagonist explains that he isn't interested in her and is only trying to understand their situation. As a result, Kyo admits she hasn't heard or seen anything about Churan. However, she suddenly becomes thoughtful, making our boy ask if she remembers anything. Actually, the current biological sister of the crown prince is named Churan. Meanwhile, in the royal palace, the mysterious princess has just confirmed our protagonist's whereabouts. Of course, it happens to be Churan, and she is looking forward to meeting our protagonist. The next chapter begins with the moon celebration for the princess's baby. Everyone, including the Su family, comes to pay their respects. Our protagonist's mom steps forward to personally congratulate her and her child, before asking about the princess's husband, noting that the guests are starting to ask questions. The princess reveals she doesn't care whether he lives or dies, it's none of her business. Hearing this, our protagonist's mom wonders if the two of them have had a falling out. A few hours later, our protagonist's third uncle hurries in, apologizing for arriving late. Already irritated, the princess asks about his whereabouts. He explains that he went to get a gift for their baby. Scoffing, she asks if he is serious about the celebration, pointing out that he should have prepared a gift in advance. In response, the man claims he had prepared one but changed his mind at the last minute to get something more suitable. Princess Chen Yang holds the gift with visible irritation and asks if her husband really got a silver lock for their child. Our protagonist's uncle foolishly explains that gold was a bit expensive, so he only got what suited the child's fate. The princess finally has enough of his nonsense. Dismissing the gift as trash, she asks if her daughter doesn't deserve a gold lock. Of course, her outburst draws everyone's attention. Her husband tries to calm her down, insisting he will buy another one, while reminding her that people are present. His remark makes her question if he has bought a gold lock before, perhaps for his mistress and her child. The man tries to speak, but no words come out. Seeing his reaction, the princess asks if he really thinks she knows nothing. She warns him to take care of his mistress, because the royal family has its own ways of dealing with fools like him. Our protagonist's uncle grows furious that she dares to threaten him. He even moves to hit her, until a voice interrupts, announcing the arrival of the eldest princess. Our protagonist spits out his drink upon hearing this. As Churan enters the hall, our protagonist silently hopes it's really her. The moment he sees her, he quickly understands what's going on. Meanwhile, Churan casually waves at him. Now, the onlookers begin to wonder about their relationship, or whether the Lingu family has ties with the royal family. Our protagonist can only complain inwardly, because if both female leads are in this novel, there's a high chance Baek Shuan has transmigrated too. Churan offers a jade lock as a gift, wishing eternal happiness to the mother and child. Chen Yang feels the gift is too precious to accept, but Churan insists. Meanwhile, the onlookers begin whispering behind our protagonist's uncle's back, seeing how a princess places more value on the child than her own father does. Humiliated, the man storms off. He secretly sends a message, believing that one day he will deal with the princess and bring his mistress and child into the Linghu household. Mid-flight, the bird carrying the message is shot down. The person who intercepts it turns out to be the princess's servant. She immediately checks its contents before reporting back to the princess that her husband is secretly contacting the second prince. During the celebration, our protagonist watches as Churan soaks up all the attention. It's only natural, since she rarely leaves the palace. Meanwhile, our protagonist can't wrap his head around the fact that Churan is actually the eldest princess. He thinks it's no wonder the system is malfunctioning because of this. Because of that, he believes that even if he causes trouble, the storyline wouldn't be affected. Although he prevented his family from being destroyed by the Su family, the Linghu family will still fall due to their own incompetence. In summary, his family will support the crown prince, who is destined to be destroyed by the second prince. And since the eldest princess is a supporter of the crown prince, he concludes that he needs to avoid her. Of course, his entire family, including Churan, hears his thoughts. Now our protagonist begins plotting. He wonders if he can cause lightning to strike and kill the second prince. But that feels too absurd, so he considers starting a rebellion instead. It should be fine, as long as the second prince dies first. Everyone stands frozen, listening to our protagonist's thoughts. His parents try to stop him, but our protagonist runs off, concluding that rebellion is the best move even if it only has a slim chance of success. Meanwhile, his parents can only conclude that their son has gone mad. Later that night, Churan departs. Our protagonist enters his room and begins thinking about forming a plan for rebellion the following day. However, he doesn't expect what comes next. He is shocked to see Churan lying on his bed. Our protagonist demands to know why she isn't in her carriage. Churan casually explains that the carriage left, but she didn't. Before anything else, our protagonist asks if she can hear his thoughts. Of course, she nods, revealing that she heard everything, especially the part about rebellion and killing the second prince. Our protagonist tells her not to misunderstand. He's only doing this to survive. She calls him an idiot and asks if he hasn't considered other options. Churan reminds him that she is the eldest princess, so by naturally aligning himself with her, both of them can easily assist and protect the crown prince. Our protagonist understands her reasoning, but thinks to himself that her life is full of drama. Of course, she hears that and tells him to think whatever he wants. Before leaving, she threatens him with an arranged marriage, asking if he really thinks he can reject a decree from her father, the emperor. Our protagonist is literally crushed by the word marriage. He immediately begs Churan to reconsider. After all, their previous engagement was that of characters in a novel, and this time, things are different. Churan doesn't respond. Instead, our protagonist notices that she's crying. He is momentarily stunned by this. He quickly insists that she stop crying, apologizing for being too sincere, and noting that good advice tastes bitter. In addition, Churan is the cousin of Princess Chen Yang, who is his uncle's wife. In other words, marrying her would disrupt their family hierarchy. However, she doesn't care and tells him to do whatever he wants. Our protagonist is in the process of persuading her when she slyly reveals that she knows about his plan to plot a rebellion and kill the second prince. Our protagonist is petrified when she explains that she was only crying because his entire family would be executed. Although she admits she has no evidence, her father, the emperor, treats her like the golden child and would do anything she asks without question. At that moment, our protagonist realizes he has stepped on a landmine. As a result, he suddenly becomes interested in marrying her. However, Churan isn't convinced. She suggests they do what adults do to prove his sincerity. This leads our protagonist to communicate mentally. Since he can't say it out loud, he tells her in his mind that he is already involved with Kiyua. In this world, she is the granddaughter of a general, and he adds that they have already done that together. Because of this, our protagonist receives a slap. Calling him an idiot, she makes it clear that this wasn't a reward, but a punishment. Our protagonist is pushed aside as she reminds him that the general supports the second prince, so getting involved with Kiyue is considered treason. Our protagonist finds himself stuck in a difficult situation. While some people are dying of thirst, our protagonist is drowning in baddies. Churan wonders if he will just stay still. At that point, our protagonist decides not to hold back anymore. Seeing this, she insists that he put in more effort. And just like that, they continue doing what only adults do at night. The next chapter takes us to the following day. Our protagonist even helps Churan put on her armor. Churan thinks that if she had known our protagonist was this capable and obedient, she would have done this much sooner. Anyway, our protagonist follows her outside, but Churan insists that he doesn't need to escort her. Still acting obedient, our protagonist appreciates her kind gesture. Before leaving, Churan advises him to prepare, because what they failed to achieve in the previous novel will definitely be accomplished this time. In other words, she is telling our protagonist to prepare for their marriage. Unbeknownst to them, our protagonist's entire family witnesses this. His dad is the first to speak, asking if he's getting old or just seeing things. His wife confirms that he isn't crazy and even suggests that Churan may have just slept with their son. Our protagonist's second uncle wonders if this has something to do with the mysterious voice he heard. His wife, shocked, asks if he heard it too. At that moment, they all realize they've been hearing our protagonist's thoughts. Our protagonist's mom feels relieved. She previously thought she was going mad, hearing her son's voice without him speaking. However, the second uncle suspects that not everyone in the family can hear these thoughts. For instance, he notices that their third brother, our protagonist's third uncle, never reacts when the thoughts are heard. His wife agrees. Our protagonist's dad reflects on how his son's thoughts have already saved them, like the situation with the Su family. Instead of cutting ties, they were preserved, and now merchants across the city are aligning with the Su family, saving them from disaster. Meanwhile, their third brother is ambitious and seems to have fallen out with the princess. On top of that, he keeps scheming to take the position of family head. Because of this, The father concludes that those who can hear the protagonist's thoughts are the ones who truly want the family's well-being. The second uncle agrees that it makes sense, but points out that it's still just an assumption. He suggests they confirm it. And just like that, they all agree. Somewhere in the royal palace, our protagonist's third uncle has just sent yet another message. The receiver reads the report and learns that Chiron visited our protagonist. However, everything is proceeding normally, as the protagonist hasn't made any suspicious moves. Just then, his thoughts are interrupted when someone enters the room. The person turns out to be the second prince, Zhao Chengze. He greets his most loyal advisor. He explains that, just as his advisor predicted, General Mao is secretly supporting his brother, the crown prince. Unsurprisingly, the advisor is revealed to be Baekxuan. Chengzi thanks him for the warning, but Baekxuan humbly claims he is merely doing his duty. Hearing this, the prince chuckles and assures Baekxuan that once he overthrows his brother, he will make sure Chiron becomes his wife. The prince also secretly notes his interest in General Mao Shun's granddaughter and promises to make her his concubine. Clearly, this guy only knows how to work hard when women are involved. But deep down, Baekxuan thinks the prince is a fool. Although he enjoys women in this strange world, he swears he will never bow beneath anyone. As expected, he is still hungry for power. In the next scene, our protagonist and Baekxuan receive imperial decrees at the same time. Each of them reacts differently upon receiving it. Our protagonist is shocked, while Baekxuan, on the other hand, is completely furious. It turns out they have both been rewarded by the emperor. Our protagonist is granted marriage to Chiron, but Baekxuan's case is entirely different. The second prince finds the situation puzzling. Although our protagonist's family is one of the top 3 merchant families in the city, and his uncle is already married into the royal family, it still doesn't make sense that his father would grant yet another princess to the Linghu family. Baekxuan, still furious, begins to think our protagonist is behind all of this. With veins pulsing, he starts swearing and cursing at our protagonist, even suspecting that he might be the same person from the previous novel. Watching Baekxuan's outburst, the prince wonders what nonsense he is talking about. Apparently, Baekxuan somehow knows he was the protagonist in the previous novel. Still, he reassures Baekxuan, noting that there is a difference between a granted marriage and an actual marriage. Baekxuan understands what the prince is trying to imply, so he asks if he has any suggestions. The prince then explains that one of his father's consorts plans to host a party where respected and powerful individuals will be invited. Since Chiron is their father's golden child, all they need to do is frame our protagonist and make him suffer humiliation. That way the emperor can cancel the marriage. Of course, the fool agrees to it, not knowing he is being used. Meanwhile, we shift to the Linghu family residence. Outside, a household servant tries to stop Kiyoi, saying she cannot enter without permission. That's when Chiron appears, teasing Kiyoi. Slightly irritated, Kiyo insists this is no way to behave while addressing her as a princess. Just like that, the two of them are on the verge of competing over who gets to meet our protagonist first. Because of this, a servant rushes inside to report that not only has a princess arrived, but also the granddaughter of the general has come to see our protagonist. This leaves our protagonist's family in utter shock. Now, our protagonist finds himself in a difficult situation. Calmly, he tries to defuse things. However, neither of them seems willing to back down. Chiron then asks what Kiyoi was thinking, trying to enter the Linghu family, considering that the Mao family supports the second prince. She wonders what her family will do if this gets out. Kiyoi fires back, revealing that her grandfather loves her so much that if she asks him to switch sides, he would do it without hesitation. Still, she notes that even if that happens, her brother would side differently. They are siblings after all. Not to mention, she has already been granted marriage to our protagonist. Kiyo snaps back again, declaring that her family commands 500,000 troops, which is far more significant than a mere marriage grant. Our protagonist is suddenly caught in the middle of something he never planned. Reflecting on Kiyo's remark, he turns to her to confirm what she just said. When she repeats her statement, she becomes confused as our protagonist says he has something important to say. At that moment, our protagonist begins to think the Mao family could actually overthrow the emperor, given their military strength. Our protagonist notes that the reason the second prince dares to compete with the crown prince is because of the Mao family. Kuye tells Chiron that she can clearly see how powerful her family is, powerful enough to even rival the royal family. Chiron responds with a jab, saying it's just like in the previous novel. Kiyue is still the same person trying to interfere with her marriage to our protagonist. Naturally, Kyuyue becomes furious. She insists that Churan shouldn't address our protagonist with such affection, before boldly revealing that she has already been intimate with him. Churan simply chuckles, as if that were good news. Now both girls are on the verge of clashing. Our protagonist tries to quietly slip away, but he's stopped by a sharp glare. Both girls immediately demand an explanation. Panicking, our protagonist hurriedly explains that he's innocent, reminding them that they were the ones who forced him. However, Kiyu cuts him off, insisting that he break off the marriage. She argues that the emperor will understand and respect the military strength of the Mao family. Churan becomes furious, pointing out that Kiyu has gone too far. Just then, a court official enters with an imperial decree. Our protagonist bows to receive it, thinking he has been saved. However, instead of a decree, the official delivers an invitation from the emperor, summoning him to attend the consort's banquet. Our protagonist accepts, and the scene skips to the day of the celebration. He is just about to step out of his carriage when the system finally appears, but it immediately flashes warning signs. Ignoring them, our protagonist believes he has finally found a way to verify the plot and understand why characters from the previous novel are suddenly appearing in this one. Unfortunately, the system begins flooding him with red warning messages as it tries to fix the error. Because of this, our protagonist feels as if his head is about to split in two, and just like that, he collapses, leaving his driver in shock. Half an hour later, he suddenly opens his eyes to a strange ceiling. Churan, relieved, tells him he's finally awake and mentions that he has been unconscious for quite some time. When our protagonist asks where he is, she explains that he is currently in her bedchamber and that she was the one who found him unconscious. Just then, the arrival of the second prince is announced. Churan asks our protagonist if she should let him in. Seeing this, our protagonist decides to leave, knowing that they aren't married yet and that his presence in her bedchamber could cause misunderstandings. However, Churan tries to stop him, insisting that he rest. Before anything can be resolved, the second prince enters, accompanied by a furious Beishuan. He jokingly asks if they've already gotten that close before marriage. Beishuan immediately pays his respects to the princess. Meanwhile, our protagonist feels a strange sense of déjà vu. The second prince casually remarks that he now understands why his sister had been acting so mysterious. Our protagonist awkwardly laughs it off. Turning to Baixuan, he's surprised to see the guy still kneeling. He tells him to get up, explaining that his sister doesn't care much for formalities. The moment Baixuan thanks the prince, our protagonist freezes in shock, realizing it's actually Baixuan.